What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more new iOS 18 features and changes. We're going to talk about why everybody is wrong about Apple stealing data to train their AI, the reason the iPhone 16 might not sell as well as expected, which iPhones the FBI are not able to unlock, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the world of Apple, this is the best place to be, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Okay, so let's start with even more new iOS 18 features and changes. So this week we saw the first public beta get released. So if you are on the public beta program, you just got your first taste of iOS 18 this week. And if we go ahead and check out the build number, and this was for the re-release as well. So we did get developer beta 3 re-released earlier this week as well, which I did make a video on, so you've probably already seen that. But we do have a build number that ends with the letter I. And if you remember, the original developer beta 3 ended with an F. And if you've been following these beta updates for a while, you know that the closer we get to an A at the end of the build number indicates the more stable the build is, which means the closer to the final release we are. Now, what's interesting is that the public beta, aka developer beta 3.5, is an I, whereas we had an F on the first developer beta, which indicates that the public beta could be less stable than the original developer beta 3. There's also a chance that this public beta was compiled before developer beta 3. And the reason I bring that up is because if we go into the messages application or anywhere on your device where you have the keyboard and you go into the emoji keyboard here, you will notice, and I pointed this out in my video, that this reverted back to the original look where we have the small emojis. We no longer have the memojis down here in this keyboard. So Apple reverted this back from developer beta 3 to 3.5. However, if the public beta, aka developer beta 3.5, I know this is kind of confusing, but if this latest release was actually compiled before the original developer beta 3, that would mean that the keyboard, the bigger icons in the keyboard, the bigger emojis in the keyboard, all of that will be coming back in beta 4. So of course, nothing is confirmed, but do not be surprised if we see the return of the emoji keyboard that we saw in beta 3, where the emoji icons were bigger and we had the memoji down here as well. Now, while we're in this section, I wanted to point out a feature that I noticed on developer beta 3, but never got around to mentioning it, and it was removed in the public beta, and this has to do with the reverted keyboard. So that is that you can search in your emojis for a person or a pet that you have as a sticker. So for example, in my photos application, I have a cat here named Iago. So if I were to go into my messages right here and go to the emoji and then search for Iago right here, it would show the sticker that I have of him, because if you can see over here on the top left, that is a sticker of him. But with iOS 18 beta 3, you can search for that and it will show it up down there, which is pretty neat. But again, it's not showing now because this whole, emoji keyboard got reverted back in the public beta. Now, there's also a change in the camera application. So if we go to our camera and we swipe up right here and go to our timer. So if we go over here to our timer, there's a new option for 5 seconds. Before, it was just 3 seconds and 10 seconds. Another change in iOS 18 beta 3 is the vehicle motion cues. So if you turn this on, you will see that we get that new little platter up here on our screen that indicates that we activated this. Before, if you activated it, you would not get that little alert up top. So I'll show that one more time. So if we go ahead and turn this on, you can see it also shows when it's inactive as well. So if I turn it off again, you'll see that changes up there to inactive. So there we go, a little bit delayed. Now, the books application is something that doesn't really get talked about a lot by Apple or myself, honestly, but there are some changes here in iOS 18 which are really nice and that I have not covered. So if we go into a book right here, there are a couple of changes. So first off, if we go to our settings here, or if we just pull up this little settings menu, this little tray here, you'll notice next to the lock icon, there's a new feature there, which is called line guide, and it gives you a little preview here. Using the line guide, it says tap above or below the guide to move it up or down a line. And you can also long press to drag it to a specific location. And the whole purpose of this line guide is just to make it easier for you to concentrate on the specific line that you're reading. And if you long press on it, it just makes it a lot easier to move it around. Like if you read fast, you probably want to just long press on it and move it to where you would like. And then if you want to disable this, you just press in the bottom left and you have the options as well for background dimming, and you could also turn off the line guide. But a more substantial change in the Books application is if we go back to our settings here, go to themes and settings, and then to customize, and then enable customize under accessibility and layout options, we now have margins. So you can now change the margins of the book by 10%. By 10%, positive or negative 10%, you can offset those margins. So that is something new in iOS 18 that I'm sure a lot of people that use the Books application will love. Now, I also noticed that we have new health widgets for the lock screen for our vitals. So you can see that this now shows the vitals right here, and it shows typical, and then also on our home screen, this is what it looks like. So that was there before, but for me, it was not working until beta 3. There's also a change in the battery section in our settings. So if you go to battery, there's now a new tidbit that tells you update finishing in background. And it says you can use your iPhone as you normally would while a recent software update finishes. So this is just a new insight on the battery page. And actually, if you go to your battery usage, there's even a section here that shows device setup and updates. So that is new. I have not seen that before beta 3. All right, so now we have to go into the calculator application, and I need to address something that I mistakenly said in last week's episode of Apple Weekly. It was actually pretty funny. I was really laughing at you guys roasting me in the comments last weekend in that episode because I said that RAD right there. So if you go to the scientific calculator, you can see we have RAD and degrees. I said RAD stands for radius, but I was wrong. It stands for radian. And then we also have degrees, which it doesn't show up right there. It just shows radian. If that is enabled, it does not show degrees unless you go back to the basic calculator. Sometimes it will glitch out and show it right there, but that is just for measurements of angles. So I just wanted to clear up that mistake that I made last weekend. So thank you guys for pointing that out for me. Now we also have an update to the Apple Store application. Of course, this is not exclusive to the iOS 18 update, but we did just get a new update I wanted to touch on here. So you can see we get a new splash screen that says a fresh, more curated experience for the For You tab. It's now easier than ever to get your next iPhone, and you can also watch quick tips from the experts now in the application. Now, the first thing you'll notice here is that new For You tab down there on the bottom left. If you tap on this, this will show you some of your recent activity. It will also show you if you have like a close Apple Store, or the recently visited or viewed Apple Store, it will show that there. And you can see we have all these other things to explore here. So just a more, For You page that has more items that are catered to you instead of just a broad, basic, page for the Apple Store. So also this week, we heard about a very interesting change that could be coming to iOS in the future. So this is not currently here with iOS 18, but this is related to Wi-Fi. And we just saw a new patent from Apple that basically says that we might be able to have a new system for ranking public Wi-Fi networks based on multiple criteria. So according to the patent, the new approach will involve crowdsourced data to map Wi-Fi access points and provide feedback on the reliability and security of each nearby network, and some of those labels to indicate if it's a safe or a dangerous Wi-Fi network will be high quality, popular, captive, suspicious, and more. So that will be very interesting and something I would love to see come to iOS, but of course this is just a patent, so it may never come at all, or at the very best it'll come maybe next year with iOS 19, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, as far as the performance goes, performance overall has been fine. I've actually seen people say that the public beta and developer beta 3.5 has worse performance than the original developer beta 3 for them. And I have to say that I'm in the same boat. Now, again, this could have to do with the build number. It could even be placebo. Maybe it's not worse. Maybe it's the exact same, but it's just, it depends on the person. Everybody's going to have a different experience. And at the end of the day, it's a beta. It's never going to be fully stable. It's never going to be perfect. But, we do have a build number that's further away from A than the original developer beta 3. So there is some merit to the thinking of, maybe it is less stable than that first developer beta 3. Now, I did go ahead and run a Geekbench test, and you can see not a big difference in score, but it is lower than what I scored on the first developer beta, or the first, beta 3, I should say, before the public beta came. So he scored a 2784 in the single core and a 6807 on the multi-core, which is not great. But again, as I always say, you can't really judge everything off of these Geekbench scores. It's just kind of a metric for us to keep track of here on the channel. I like doing it. It doesn't tell you the full thing. So you guys will have to let me know down below in the comments how your experience has been for performance, because I do also crowdsource a lot of the information, I speak about from the comments down there, in terms of what you guys are telling me if your device is running better or worse than the previous latest beta. Now, when it comes to the battery life, let me go ahead and check my main device here because I've noticed a, kind of a downtick in battery life as well, which I definitely was not expecting with the public beta. I thought for sure we would see better battery life with the public beta compared to developer beta 3, but to me, it's gotten a little bit worse, and some of the data here proves that as well. So I did update to the public beta on Monday, and you can see almost every day I'm over 100%. Actually, every day I was over 100%, whereas before that, I did not go over 100%. Of course, I do have lower usage on some of those days as well, but you can see the charts also show that battery life, for me at least, is worse on the public beta. So that's unfortunate, but again, I'm hoping that we do see battery life improve with the next public beta, aka developer beta 4. Okay, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So let's go into our calendar here. So next week, I think is going to be a relatively quiet week for Apple. So I do not suspect we're going to see any type of iOS 18 beta release next week, at least based on what Apple has done over the past 2 years. So I would expect Apple to pick back up with the beta releases the following week, on the week of July 29th. So I think on the week of July 29th, we will see developer beta 4, which will be followed by the second public beta. So Apple, for some reason this year, has been loving the Monday releases. So they've been releasing a lot of software on Mondays, but betas do typically, just over a longer period of time, they do typically get released on Tuesday. So I'm just going to say that we could see it any day next week, or any day on the week of the 29th, I should say, because Apple is unpredictable with these releases, but I would not expect anything next week. It's always possible because, again, it is Apple. They are unpredictable, so they could go ahead and release that software next week, but it seems more likely that it's going to come on the week of July 29th. And then, of course, we will switch over to weekly betas soon after that, and then we will get the final release of iOS 18 in mid-September. Okay, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news, and we have to start with the big news about Apple and potentially stealing YouTube subtitles to train their AI models. This is a big story over this past week. We saw a ton of headlines out there basically bashing Apple and Apple Intelligence for stealing YouTubers' subtitles and putting it in Apple Intelligence, but turns out that is false. So Proof News did an investigation, and they found that subtitles from 173,000 YouTube videos were used for AI training by Apple, Nvidia, Anthropic, and Salesforce. Now, these companies train their models using the Pile, which is a collection by Eleuther AI that also includes books, Wikipedia articles, and much more. So it was not just these YouTube subtitles. And Proof News even created a tool to see, which channels and which videos were being sourced for this training data. Now, here is the catch. Apple was never collecting data to begin with. They simply utilized a third-party data set called the Pile, and they openly stated that in their Open Elm paper back in April. However, Apple has confirmed that the Open Elm model is not being used to power Apple Intelligence or any of its machine learning features. It was only created for research purposes, just like dozens of other models that Apple has published. And Apple also confirmed that they have no plans to build a new version of Open Elm in the future. So a lot of these headlines that said Apple was collecting data were false for multiple reasons. Number one, it was never Apple in the first place actually collecting the data. They just utilized a third-party data set to use in Open Elm, which was never meant to be, actually used by the public, like by us. We were never going to be able to access these YouTube subtitles because that Open Elm model is never something we're going to be able to actually use on our devices. That was just a research-only model. So crisis averted. Now, we cannot say the same for the other companies. They may be actually using, those YouTube subtitles in their model that is like customer facing where you can actually access them, but that is not the case for Apple, as they confirmed. So by now, we all know about the attempted assassination on Trump, but what's interesting is that the shooter's phone was able to be hacked into. It was able to be accessed by the FBI in less than 40 minutes, thanks to Cellebrite, which is the well-known mobile forensics company who does work for the FBI and law enforcement. However, they were only able to unlock this phone because it was an Android phone that was not a Pixel. So if it were an iPhone or a Google Pixel 6, 7, or 8, it would not be possible to break into. And we know this thanks to leaked documents obtained by 404 Media from Cellebrite. So these documents reveal that Cellebrite cannot unlock iPhones running iOS 17.4 and later, nor can they unlock the Google Pixel 6, 7, or 8. So do with that information what you will, but I just found that to be pretty interesting. So you know how last week we talked about how Bloomberg was reporting that we might see a big increase in sales for the iPhone 16 because of the upcoming Apple Intelligence features? Well, it looks like those may be a little bit optimistic, because according to Ming-Chi Kuo, he said this: although there have been rumors of increased orders for iPhone 16 from time to time after WWDC, recent earnings calls from TSMC and Largan have hinted that the iPhone 16 orders may not have increased. So TSMC said that they did not see any type of sudden increase in unit growth. And then for Largan, they said that orders for high-end models this year are similar to last year. So this brings about a pretty interesting debate that I want to have here, because do you think that software in general is capable of a super cycle for an iPhone? And what I mean by super cycle is a massive increase in sales because everybody has to get the latest device, which creates, a super cycle for the iPhone. With the iPhone 10, for example, that was a super cycle because it was a radically different iPhone, So do you think that software ever, even if it's Apple Intelligence, can lead to a super cycle, sale for the iPhone? So that's interesting. I don't really know which way I go. I seem to think that it's more physical based. Like I think that your average everyday person is going to care a lot more about the physical look than maybe the capabilities. So, this kind of lines up with what I was thinking all along. I thought 10%, a 10% bump in iPhone shipments just because of AI was a little gracious. And now Ming-Chi Kuo kind of brings us down to reality and makes us realize that maybe we're not going to see such a dramatic increase in iPhone sales this year just because of Apple Intelligence. But of course, we'll see. This is all just, speculation and rumors for now. But let me know what you think in the comments. Now, we also have some fresh rumors on the iPhone SE 4, which I personally cannot wait for. I think this new iPhone SE is going to sell like crazy because we just heard from a Weibo leaker, Fixed Focus Digital, that the backplate manufacturing process for the iPhone SE 4 is exactly the same as the standard model in Apple's upcoming iPhone 16 lineup. So this new iPhone SE 4 is going to have, at the minimum, the exact same backplate as the iPhone 16. Now, will it have an OLED display like the iPhone 16? We don't know yet, but it looks like this new iPhone SE is going to be very similar to the base iPhone 16, which is going to be amazing. Now, we're not expecting that this year. We are expecting the new iPhone SE in the spring of next year. So if that thing looks like the iPhone 16 and if it can run Apple Intelligence, that is going to be an amazing seller for Apple, I think, for the next several years. And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, a man in Memphis called police after seeing two men dropping off air conditioner units in the backyard of a home, and one of the men was armed. Now, when police arrived, the suspects were not at the house, but they did locate 4 AC units and documented the serial numbers since they were believed to be stolen. And it just so happened that hours later, an employee of an apartment complex flagged down police to tell them that 9 AC units were stolen from the apartment complex. So at this point, police began to connect the dots, but their job was about to become a whole lot easier because, the AC units were equipped with AirTags. So now that the employee had the location of the stolen AC units, they turned it over to police, who tracked them down to a warehouse where they spotted the same SUV that was at the house with the armed men. Now, that was enough to move in and arrest the lone suspect, so there was only one suspect there at the time, who had the SUV backed into the warehouse with its tailgate open. Now, when investigators entered the warehouse, they discovered at least 4 smashed AirTags and at least 12 stolen air conditioner units. The man that got caught at the warehouse was arrested and charged with theft of property and later got out on a $20,000 bond. So that is wild. That is definitely a first here on the channel. I've never heard of stolen AC units being tracked down via AirTags. I mean, where do you even put those in an air conditioning unit? So that's wild, but that is an awesome ending to that story. So that's it for this episode. Make sure to tune in next Saturday for another episode of Apple Weekly. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.